In general, a performance coach, what is that? What do they do?
Okay, that's a good question, because there is a lot of sort of
Yes.
misunderstandings around this. So I think the easiest way to explain it is to compare it to sort of another model. So you have like a more traditional model is where you have an athlete,
Yes.
and then the athlete might have around him several people. So he might have if he's a runner, for example, he might have a running coach, then he might have a physiotherapist, he might have some kind of physical coach for the strength training, then he might have a nutritionist, like a physio, I said, or a nutritionist, psychologist. He has all these people around him,
Yes.
but none of them necessarily have a lead on everything, but rather the athlete is hearing from different places different information, and he is very much running the show.
Yes.
Depending, it's not always, but this is a black and white example. So but that's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
Or then there's the sort of way that we at Hintsa, how we organize this,
Yeah.
where you have the athlete, and then you have the performance coach, which is then, for example, in this time, me.
Yes.
And then behind me, I have a number of specialists that I talk to regularly. So then rather than the athlete having to put the picture together and understand, okay, what is the best compromise for me, then he has somebody like a coach like me who can do a lot of the background work and understand what is actually going on. So I can talk to, when there's a problem, I can talk to a nutritionist, I can talk to a doctor, I can talk to a physiologist about these things. Okay, what is the best way to solve this problem? And you get a more fuller picture, and I do the background work rather than the athlete meant to do it. Of course, there's sometimes connection also between the support and the athlete, but it's sort of, it deloads the athlete quite a lot, and of course puts the more responsibility on me on this. And I find it's a efficient way, but it's of course because there's only one discussion point for the athlete, and I'm doing the work. So, but that's a sort of broad categorization of how it works.
But you also have to understand his needs, isn't it? To know, okay, I'll need to pull now the way you just now described Hinsa company. So you have all those different people specialized in different area, but you have to understand your client. Where are his needs, and how do I get exactly that specific need for him?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's, of course, it's not as much as it's my understanding, but it's a lot of dialogue between. There has to be discussion. It's the discussion together with the athlete and the coach. The athlete is the one person who has to feel well. He's the one who's performing, and he's the star. And it's just we all try to. Otherwise, we try to help him and find the best compromise for him. That's what it looks like. But I think to dig it a little bit deeper on this, I think it's important to also understand where performance comes from, because then it explains the coaching process a lot better. So because I'm quite frustrated sometimes to read, especially on the sort of normal newspapers, or it's easy to write about quick fixes.
Oh yes, and nowadays
quick fixes are also the sort of people they often want to also read these things that, okay, or this diet fixes my every problem, or this sleep is the most important thing in the world, or as much as it is important, but it's not the most one, is not the only thing. Or then there's this trick on this trick, or this medicine, this is going to fix everything. And that's just not the way it is. You have to view that they're actually all important things as part of the performance puzzle. Sleep is extremely important, nutrition is important, training is important, everything, they're all important, but you need to understand how they interrelate. What is the hierarchy? What is okay, for this specific sport, the hierarchy is probably here. These are the important things. And the way I look at performance normally is that I like to divide it into different layers. So I like to normally put a bottom layer, which is like a foundational layer. This is sort of foundation of a house. So it has to be solid. And this includes things like general good nutrition habits, general high quality nutrition. Then it includes high quality sleep. What are you doing for sleep and recovery? What are you doing for life management? What is your scheduling, your weekly calendar? What is it looking like? Is it organized, structured, or is it a complete mess? What's happening with the training side of things? What's happening? What is your general health issue? What about your mental health, your emotional well-being? So
Yes.
if these are the foundational aspects, so they sit on the bottom, they allow the top stuff to happen. So looking at, for example, Formula One, then the second layer is the specific skills. That's in Formula One, for example, a lot of the information processing, because it's such a cognitive sport. It's almost like a knowledge worker. So they need to have skills to have deal with multiple things at the same time. That's called attentional capacity. Yeah, and that level you have also several other things. You have the communication skills, because feedback is such an important thing, and then other things like this. And then the top level is the performance layer. That's where you have your actually specific performance related things. So you're driving, your sensory motor skills for your pedaling and steering, and your race strategy, racecraft, several things on this, specific skills on overtaking, defending. So you suddenly you're breaking the sport into 3 layers, and you can understand how all these different elements relate to performance, how they affect it. And that's the sort of thing, that's the sort of level of detail where you have to go to understand where performance comes from. Because then when you start looking at let's say, a quick fix, like if it was a nutritional thing or anything else, I have nothing against nutrition. I think it's very important, but it's just a common field where there's so much misunderstanding and confusion. Correct. So it's typical to say that one supplement will change everything, and that's just not the way, because the whole continuum here, and the supplement thing is a small part of the puzzle. It might be a good addition, but it's not everything. And that's the sort of message that I want to get across when talking about performance, that it's just a lot of things come together, and you need to understand how they interrelate. And that's the sort of thing that what I try to do in my job.
Wow. This is great. I think you are opening our mind at the moment, really. What is performance? So, I mean, thanks to Netflix, we've got that little glimpse of what is happening behind the scenes. Can you give us an idea of what it means to be a coach in this industry?
But I think it comes down to, like I said in the beginning, about the international relations. So I think you have to have an understanding of how the business works, because it's such an important part of Formula One. You need to understand that there are so many stakeholders wanting the time or competing for the interest of the driver. And you need to, as a coach, understand where they fall in place, and also this is not just myself, it's also there's the whole team around the driver always has a media assistant, and there's different people, so it's not just myself, but as a whole the team around the driver has to understand how do you balance best the marketing days, how do you balance best the whole package around the year,
exactly,
and then what is the best way to organize it. So that's one thing for sure, and it's important, because otherwise you get easily lost, because you don't understand why some people are asking certain things.
You just mentioned you have to understand also the industry.
I think I would maybe need is a I would just put it this way. I feel it's definitely helped me.
Yeah.
I don't say that everybody must have it, but I find I can tell my story. For example, for me to get to F1, I was a relatively unexperienced coach. I had done my university degrees, but I got a chance. I got lucky, and I got to meet Dr. Aki Hintsa, and he offered me the chance to come in here. And as much as my coaching experience was not so high, I felt that one of the reasons why I did manage to excel in this job was my understanding a little bit about the people and about the stakeholders there. And I think that's just a personal reflection of why I feel it's important. But there's probably some other people who know different things. But I definitely value this one.
Or in this case, from Ferrari to Aston Martin. How do you prepare your client with all these readjusting new expectations, and as you said, different interests from all corners? How do you bring your client again back to this new adjustment, and leaving the past and looking forward to the future, and motivating at the same time? I'm sure it's very, very difficult.
Okay, that's a good question. I think as you mentioned, it is a lot about it's essentially a changing jobs situation.
Exactly.
So whenever you change a job, I think for all of us at that point, there's the expectation and the sort of just a need to prove yourself.
Yes.
So there's always that aspect of, okay, you need to be delivering the results that are being expected from you. And at the same time, on the other hand, you also have the social likability. You're suddenly working with new people. You need to get to know them. You need to find the best way to work with them. You need to, this includes the engineers, the marketing team, the everybody in the whole, the management, everybody. And it's just whenever there's new people, you need to a little bit adjust. So there's of course this element of the situation. But of course for us, it's still a change within Formula One is still a really reasonably small change. So it's, everybody knows who Sebastian is, and a couple of people also know myself. So it's less, it's not as big of a change. It's not a complete different field. So, and
but
also
the car, isn't that a huge,
that is one thing. But I think still, what I would point out is that F1 is a place where there's so many things that you cannot control.
Yeah.
There's so many elements that you as a driver or as a driver team, that you cannot put your hands on.
Yeah.
So in the end, the work at different teams or different places is still very much the same. And as a driver, you must be focusing on the things that you can control, because otherwise you go mad with the amount of information everywhere. There's always more you could look at. There's always more things you could try to get involved with, but ultimately there's enough in being a driver, and you need to work on your process. You need to make sure that you are there on the day at the best possible shape, and that's what it's about. So it's about working. It's about work, and it's about the process, and that's where the focus has to be. So it's not even if it's different car, the work stays the same.